You know, there are a lot of dynamics, but it's up to each and every individual to decide, because you would want to leave a will with me, and then what if maybe I realize that, okay, actually in terms of this will, I'm the one who's benefiting more, then yeah, it favors me. But then what happens if it doesn't favor the others? Because now you are creating a certain, I would say, you're creating a hatred amongst the children, because you are giving me a will to keep, which I'm the one who's benefiting better than the others. And then the others are going to be looking at me in a different way upon your death. So obviously you don't want that situation where your children are not going to be happy just because I was the favorite child, I would say. Being a favorite child, then yes, the siblings will never be happy about it. So again, where do you need to keep it? I would say it's entirely upon you to know where you think will be best to keep it. You know what? I wouldn't say there is no need.
So you don't see it?
You know, it depends on a person, because at first I was asking myself, why do you have two? But then I realized as I'm working with property investors that actually there is a way in where you are protecting certain assets that you know are paid up, whereby you don't want to expose them to your creditors. And then there's a way where you can use a business trust for trading purposes, because some people, they don't want to use a company, they want to use a trust. And then obviously they want to find a better way to save on tax and all of that. But having more than two, for me, I would say two, but having more than two, I would say I would need to understand from that person why more than two. Because for me, it doesn't make sense unless obviously you are very wealthy, whereby you are having each trust with its own beneficiaries, and then it's not the same beneficiaries. Trust number one has got label, trust number two has got you, trust number three has got Faith, trust number four has got me. So it depends. So as I'm saying, it would be better for me to understand from that person what was the reason behind. Remember, when I was saying that you are creating a trust fund. So in creating a trust fund, you're doing it for those people that you choose as beneficiaries. But then it depends, again, how many people you want to benefit. If you want those people to benefit, again, do you want them to benefit from one trust, or do you just want to spread it? It depends. So I wouldn't say you are wrong to have 7, but then I would wonder why 7? Okay, so we obviously talking about a will, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, when we were talking about your marital status, right? So in terms of your marital status, if you are married in commute of property, so when you are married in commute of property, whatever it is that you are doing within your estate, you need to know whether you are taking a debt, 50-50. Whether you are increasing your wealth, 50-50. So it doesn't change. That is why even if you draft a will, let me talk about exclusion. Even if you draft a will and you exclude your spouse, maybe you've decided, you know what, yeah, my kids, let me rather leave everything to my kids and exclude my spouse because maybe she's well off or whatever it is that you may think. So what will happen is whatever it is that you have said in the will, my property, my car, my policy, my whatnot, wife has to receive the fee, whether he's mentioned in the will or not mentioned in the will. He has to receive the 50% because what you were dealing with in your will was your own 50% in the joint estate. It was not the whole estate. Because it's joint, even if you leave a will, you are dealing with your own portion in the joint, not the whole joint estate. So she has to receive her 50% on the side, and then we deal with the will. Then while we're dealing with the will, depends on what the will says. The spouse is included in the will, name. And then if the spouse is included in the will, yes, what will happen is the spouse married in commute of property will automatically take their 50% share within the joint estate, right? And then if she does that, the other 50%, she will then earn what we call a child share on the other 50%, which will be taken by the children. Right? So unless then if the will specifically says, because it's always better when the spouse signs the will with the husband or the deceased person with the spouse. Because at least you have a better understanding together with your husband that this is what needs to happen, right? So meaning the 50% doesn't get touched. That's the part I think we need to understand. If you're married in commute of property, you can't touch that 50%. It belongs to that person, regardless of whether that person was contributing or not contributing. I had a lot of people who think that I bought this property and I've been paying the bond levies, the rates, but then how come this person is getting 50%? Unfortunately, because of the type of the marriage that you have. That 50% belongs to that person regardless. I'm sorry, again. I'm really sorry. If there is no certificate confirming the thumbprint. Because if you sign with a thumbprint, it's still valid, but whoever is assisting you to sign the will needs to sign, I would say, sort of a commissioner of oath stamp to confirm that, yes, Patega was signed with a thumbprint, it is Patega's thumbprint.
So it must be attached together?
Yebo. Yeah, because if it's not there, then that's when it becomes questionable, especially if there's a dispute in terms of the will. The renewal was on the estate plan. The estate planning, the whole process of the estate planning is when you are checking your will is still valid, or there is maybe a change within the family where there's an additional child, not necessarily the trust itself. Because the trust, once you register it, there's no need for you to renew. Yes. It's only the will that needs to be checked every year, so that you must see a need to renew the will if there is a need to do so. It's again not necessary to say it must be renewed every year, but it's just for you to be able to look at, the dynamics of what is happening here, all the changes that are happening within you, your family, and then whatever that maybe, you are married, maybe divorced, because if you are divorced and you both had a will and she was mentioned, then to remove her, those kind of things. So the risk associated with the trust. Yes. Right. Okay. So when you have a trust, firstly, because I think your question is obviously going to be broader in responding to it, because you can decide to have a family trust alone, or you can have a business trust alone, or you can have both. So now, if we were to take about a risk, is number one, if you don't do a proper administration of the trust, then it becomes risky, because SARS can investigate to try and see, because what has happened is a lot of people, they've been using trust to hide assets. So if then SARS decides, let me just see what's happening in this trust, yes, they can investigate. So that's the other risk that is happening, is when you are poorly administering the trust. Okay? And then also, if you do not deal with your proper structuring, that's the risk. Have a trust there, and then maybe the trust is just sitting with, let's say, 50% of the shareholding in the company, the other 50% is sitting with someone else. And then there is obviously a risk, because if then you and the other partner in your business, there's some sort of a conflict, and then what happens? So there's going to be a risk. So I think what is important also is that whatever it is that you are doing within your structuring of your own investment portfolio is just to ensure that you get a proper legal advice. So that, because the advice that is given to each and every person is different, it's not the same, because it depends on that person. And then again, if I may mention, the other risk associated with a trust is when when you are thinking that you are doing a structuring, and you structure your things in a proper manner, but then because you appointed family members in your trust, and then you and your family members, their family dynamics, and then you fight, and then what happens? Obviously, they're not going to be looking after your interest within that trust. Because remember, as trustees in the trust, you are the custodians of these assets, right? So as custodians, you have to carry a certain vision of the founder. So chances are that person whom you have conflict with is no longer going to be looking after the interest of the founder.